Hello everyone, welcome back to my lecture. So in our last discussions, we already began the course theorem, especially how to tackle externalities to address positive or negative externalities. And then we also discussed about what could be the private sector solutions to address negative externalities. So in this particular lecture, we are going to talk about public sector solutions to externalities. So in this particular lecture, we'll be mainly focusing on what are the public remedies, or what are the remedies from the public sector or involvement of the government at the policy level that can actually address or tackle externalities. So again, it could be negative externalities or positive externalities, but then what would be the role of the government? So when we talk about public sector involvements or the solutions, we are basically talking about government's involvement in order to regulations on the quantity, or in order to regulate the price, which is like form of taxations. So let's go ahead with the taxation, corrective taxations as a solution to negative production externalities. So let us first begin with the negative externalities. As we said, that negative externalities where as a policymakers, especially economists, they get kind of more concern because it has the adverse impact on the society and also the different beneficiaries, and there we need government interventions. And this is very kind of true in case of environmental policies or kind of damages that are associated with the negative externalities. So we will take the example of same, like say industry, like heavy industries like steel, that in our case the example that we had taken, or say garment industries, which actually produces industrial waste or the sludges, which actually getting routed through the river, and then river is getting polluted, and how to tackle. So in our private solutions that we discussed, where we said that market can actually tackle with the property right granted, and that is what course theorem we discussed in case of private sector solutions. In the public sector solutions is like when and how government can intervene. And we also spoke about in our last class that what are the problems that are associated with um, you know uh, from private sector involvement, like in the course theorem. And there we actually spoke about like it's very difficult to address all the issues of the negative externalities through negotiations. Sometimes negotiation becomes very expensive, like it involves about bribes or some formal, even formal money exchange, or some hold out issues, or some free rider problems. So those are the issues that we faced, or we discussed in context of addressing negative externalities, or how private sector actually actually try to help to address negative externalities. So that is our the problem that we encountered. But then if issues are really big, and much more large scale, and where we really need government interventions, and there we are trying to explain how it should be. Let us take the help of graphical illustrations, and then let us try to understand how government can actually intervene, and through taxation can actually help to address negative externalities. So here, like, we are again taking the same market, like say here price along with the vertical axis, and quantity along with the horizontal axis. And as we know that this is private marginal benefit, which is nothing, is basically the demand curve of that particular firm, and this is like private marginal benefit. And here we are talking about say market for steel, or say garments, and we are assuming which has some sort of negative repercussions while producing the output for other stakeholders, like say fishers community in our example. And then so this one is our upper sloping straight line is like our private marginal cost, and private marginal cost is nothing, is basically the firm's supply curve. So here firm's demand curve and firm supply curve is intersecting at say point E, and across this point, like corresponding this equilibrium point, we are getting Q1 means OQ1 amount of quantity and OP amount of the price that are actually getting determined at the market. So certainly point E, so at point E, there is a private market efficiency, and in this case you can clearly see that there is no shortages or there is no surplus, and this is what we get private market optimum point from the consumer side as well, from the firm side. So now the assumption is this particular industry like farm, like steel and garments, they are actually producing industrial waste which farm is actually routing to the river, and river is getting polluted. In that particular case there is a negative sort of production externalities or negative externalities out of the production by the farm, and therefore there is a marginal damage for the each unit that farm produces. So now say we get the new supply curve, which is like social marginal cost curve, which includes the marginal damage, because private marginal cost, which is supply curve of the farm, is not including the marginal damage. So marginal damage has to be taken into account when we think about the supply curve of the steel or the garment as a whole for the society. And here we are saying that it is not at the cost of anybody's, that farm should get the price and the output. It is certainly based on like overall well-being of all the populations, and here including direct beneficiaries or direct communities who are getting adversely impacted from the direct productions of the steel, right? So here this particular shift that we got it due to marginal damage. So this area is marginal damage, and therefore social marginal cost is shifting on the left hand side, which leads to the different equilibrium point, because here social marginal benefit is getting equals to private marginal benefits equals to demand, because demand curve is, there is no change in the demand curve, like there is no change from the economies, especially on the demand of the commodity like steel or garments, is basically social marginal benefit and private marginal benefit, they are actually equals to each other, and therefore there is no changes in the demand curve. The changes what will happen because of this marginal damage is the social marginal cost, and therefore social marginal cost is the overall supply curve for the steel. And then we get the new equilibrium point, which is E dash. So at E dash again we get the equilibrium point, but then quantity at this point is reduced, but then price is increased. So at point E again, this is socially optimum point, And then at this particular point you can see like quantity has reduced, like say quantity has shifted from OQ1 to OQ2, and price has increased from OP1 to OP2. What does that mean? In case of private sector solution, this particular amount of MD was referred as the payment between these two beneficiaries or two players in the market, like between fisher communities and farms owner, like industrialist, owner of the steel factory. So that arrangement, like MD, that particular amount will be paid, and in our last example we had given like per unit cost is $100. Like if farm is producing one more unit extra, what would be the damage? And then that is defined as marginal damage, and then marginal damage can be tackled by the private sector kind of solutions, where market will sort of help. And in that particular case we said that that let's introduce payment and market will make that happen, and then still industry will pay for their additional unit of the productions of the steel, and that particular that 100 dollars per unit they will actually pay to the fishers community. So this marginal damage in case of private solution, it was in form of payment, private payment. But in case of government or public solutions, this marginal damage will be imposed as a cost and will be imposed as a tax by the government. So this particular area, it is not just the payment, it was actually payment in case of private sector solutions, but this is in case of government interventions or public sector solution, it is basically nothing, is the tax. So this amount is basically tax. Because of the tax, price is actually this tax is imposed on the steel production, and therefore since this tax is imposed and then price of the product has increased, but then farm will kind of enact to this introduction of the tax is by producing lesser as compared to the market efficiency point, and therefore farm will produce less as compared to the market efficiency point. Like at point E, like OQ, instead of producing OQ1 amount of quantity, after imposition of the tax, farm will produce OQ2 amount of quantity, because if they are producing additional unit, there will be imposition on the tax from the government side. So this particular tax is the public sector solutions, and this particular tax is referred as Piguvian tax. Like AC Pigu introduced this on the price, and therefore this particular solution that we are getting it is like by introduction of the Piguvian taxation process on the production and on the price. So here price is nothing, is basically price in form of taxation. So here when we talk about price has increased from OP1 to OP2 because it had increased, but this is due to taxation. So this particular taxation, what we call Piguvian taxation. So I hope you get it, like what the concept of corrective taxation in this particular case, when market cannot manage, or we can't leave certain things, especially environment related issues on the market to tackle that externalities. And here of course the role of government and their role of public policy plays very important, and like this taxation, how this taxation will be imposed, and in that particular this comes under the policy level discussions. And here and taxation is a kind of revenue for the government, and therefore correct formation of the taxation also very important when government frame the policy. So this is one of the ways in which negative production externalities can be addressed and can be tackled with the help of taxation. So now let's move to the other case where we will talk about, like, when there is positive production externalities, and say what is the role of, say, subsidies. We can think of, like, solar panel, like encouragement of the solar installation of the solar panels. And then you can see, like, government, there are many government subsidies that are available, and they are promoting solar panel both at the macro level, but also at the household level. And this could be taken as one of the kind of example of the kind of subsidies or the public sector solutions to manage positive externalities in the market. So let us again take the help of graphical illustration, and then try to understand how subsidy works, and then how subsidy as a form of public sector solutions can tackle or can address positive externalities from the productions. So here again, like, price, in this case, like, say, price of solar panel, and then here quantity. So here solar panel, solar as a commodity, solar panel is a kind of commodity, and we are trying to understand the price and quantity demanded for a commodity. So that is very important in this particular discussion. We are not talking about say, pollutions, or we are talking about the impact. We are actually talking about the product first, and then what are the problems associated with the production of the goods and services, and then later we can actually try to understand how government also can tackle on the, say, on the outcome, like, say, pollution. So that will be our next discussion. But then in this particular case is basically, so far, whatever the point of discussion that we had in with regard to externalities, we are actually taking product market into considerations. So on the horizontal axis, it is quantity of the solar panel, and on the vertical axis is the price of the solar panel. And here we are, let's say, private marginal benefit, which is like our demand. And here, and then here we are talking about production positive, subsidies as a solution to the positive production externalities. Is basically on the production. So who will be getting the subsidy? Not the consumer. Is basically we are sort of talking about subsidy in context of subsidy to, imposed to the producers, and that's why we are talking about production externalities. And here this is like, say, private marginal cost. Private marginal cost is nothing, is basically supply curve, and here we get Q1 amount of quantity, and here P1, OP1 is a price level, and E1 is the equilibrium price, again OP1 and OQ1 at point, say, E1. It is actually market efficiency point, private, but then private market efficiency point. And in this particular case, we can also say that it is under perfect competitions, where there is no kind of excess demand or excess supply, or there is no disequilibrium kind of situations out here. So now marginal benefit is imposed, or marginal benefit that producer get it because of the imposition of the subsidy. So now producers are encouraged to produce more solar panel, so that they can in the market more number of solar panel can be available, so that consumer can get benefit out of it. But then we are not talking about that imposition of the subsidy or introduction of subsidy or encouragement of the subsidy to the consumer who will be encouraged to buy solar panels. So that particular case we are not talking about here. So when we are talking about marginal benefits, for whom marginal benefits that we are talking about? So in this particular case, marginal benefit for producers. So if subsidy is given to the producers, so which curve will be getting impacted on this? So which supply curve of the production? So producers will be encouraged to produce more, and therefore supply curve, like producers will get new supply curve, or say new social marginal cost curve, which is nothing, is basically private marginal cost curve plus marginal benefit. So what is the amount of marginal benefit? So this is the area, is like marginal benefit, and this marginal benefit is nothing, is basically government subsidy on the solar production to the private producers of the solar production. So what is the impact in the market equilibrium? So we see here, so equilibrium, of course equilibrium point has changed from E1 to E2, and here production has gone up because producers are encouraged to produce more because subsidy is given. And then since subsidy is given by the government, the price of the solar panel has decreased because few point of the few cost, like private cost of production, is taken care of by the subsidy, and that subsidy also has to be reflected on the price of the overall solar production. So we get the new equilibrium point, and that new equilibrium point is like, say, at E2 we get OP2, which is like production has increased from OQ1 to OQ2, and we get reduced price, like like say OP2, and price has decreased from OP1 to OP2. So this is what we get. But then this E2 also equilibrium point, but then this is socially optimal point. So this is what we talk about when we talk about subsidies as a solution to positive production externalities. So now we will not discuss much in details when subsidies are given to the consumers and consumers are encouraged to kind of install more solar panel at the household level, or at different levels, at the farms level or at the organization levels. But then we already discussed in case of our externality debate, where we already had tried to show that even how market fails even in case of subsidy. So if just imagine this subsidy is given to the consumer, so which curve will be shift? I mean, this also could be the exercise for you, like which curve will be impacted? Of course the demand curve. So PMB will be kind of impacted, and through the like say positive consumption externality will be reflected through the demand curve shift, and demand curve will shift from right to left, and that's how, or left to right. So depending on how we give the subsidy or introduction of the taxation. So this is how we kind of talk about or how public sector solution that happens, like either taxation can be introduced to tackle negative externalities, negative consumption externalities, or subsidy will be given to the consumer for the positive consumption externalities. So this is what subsidies and then taxation in case of price and quantity, and that is how the entire externality and then public sector solutions to tackle externalities, how we should deal with it. So now I will stop here, and these are the references that I have used to explain positive production externalities and negative production externalities in case of taxation and the subsidy, in particular context where government plays important role, or public sector solution or the remedies that we get it to address externalities. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll see you in my next class.